People wishing they were me. You wish you were me. You know. That's why you fucking hate, because you're fucking jealous. Another old geriatric bitch criticizing younger, more attractive women who are overweight.
Being proud of who you are is a good thing. Baseless delusion is not such a good thing. So what makes this middle-aged woman who is clearly unfit so confident? The lady in question is Chantal, also known as Foodie Beauty, a vlogger from Canada. Watching her videos, it was clear she interacts with very few people. She repeatedly makes statements that are clearly false or untrue, but in her head, she believes them to be true. With such ferocity, I believe she could pass a lie detector test. To understand how her mind works, we're going to have to do a little detour and go back to college. I had a professor who always vowed to fail students that try to do research on human nature just by using 5 of their friends or their roommates. His logic was you could not possibly understand human nature by looking at 5 people out of 7.5 billion people. He said we should try to imagine the 7.5 billion people on the planet all are jigsaw pieces. You cannot work out what a 7.5 billion piece jigsaw puzzle will be just by 5 pieces. You can't see the bigger picture. Similarly, you can't work out what human nature is like just by speaking to 5 of your friends. He knew that we couldn't do research on 7.5 billion people, but he always encouraged us to work with as many people as possible for any research that we conducted. The more people that we interacted with, the more pieces of the puzzle that we got, the more that we would see the bigger picture. So whether we were doing psychological research, physical research, or sociological research, we had to get as many puzzle pieces as possible to understand humans. So now we can take that information back to Foodie Beauty. Foodie Beauty has a very reclusive lifestyle. While she is not technically a shut-in, she travels in society in a protective bubble. She actively avoids interacting with the public or strangers. So without human interaction, she just hasn't collected a great deal of those puzzle pieces. It may surprise you, but she's not alone in her way of thinking. There are actually thousands of YouTubers that think this way. Chantal is just one of those people whose channel has gained traction. And to understand how she thinks, I've had to divide YouTubers or social media people into 3 categories. The average Joes, the influencers, and the antisocial oddities. So let's look at the average Joes. These consist of students and adults in paid or unpaid work. I consider charity and voluntary work as bona fide work. The average Joe takes part in social media as an extension of their job, as a platform for their hobby, or just to say to the world, I was here. Next, we have the influencers. Now, a lot of them have started as the average Joes. They will have millions of followers, lucrative advertising and sponsorship deals, and loads of collaborations. They are paid and bankrolled to show how fantastic life can be when you've got money. And the final category is the antisocial oddity. These people do exist in everyday life, but because they're antisocial, we tend not to interact with them. We are curious because they're different and they are not like the people that we interact with on a daily basis. So social media gives us a portal into their lives, and it also gives them a portal to communicate with people that they would be ignoring on a daily basis. Chantal just didn't tick the box for being an average Joe or an influencer, so she fitted into one category and one category alone, the antisocial oddity. Now, antisocial oddities share the same character traits. Their romantic interests, their income, and their gender can all be different. We are looking at their character traits, nothing else. Antisocial oddities are not new to the public. In fact, they've always been with us. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that people who have these character traits will break the law. Some will, some won't. We are talking about character traits and how they present themselves in front of a camera. For the purpose of this video, we're going to give them 10 character traits. Their flight or fight response is wonky. Or to make it easier, imagine that there's a button for your flight and fight response. Their button is damaged. This leaves them in a permanent state of fight or flight. Normally, we would only go into fight or flight mode if we perceive something to be dangerous, intimidating, or stressful, like being alone in an isolated park at night. But their flight or fight mode is on all the time, even when things aren't intimidating or frightening.
It's a little bit rainy, but there's no wind, and it's good because there's no people.
They will actively remove themselves away from people and stay by themselves. Now, this is not because they're scared of people or social anxiety. It's more sinister than that. If they can't control you, namely abuse you or use you, they don't want to be around you. And if they are forced to be around you, they're going to fight you. They are very godlike and dictatorial. They're superior.
Don't try and cancel me.
What?
I don't give a fuck.
What the fuck?
I don't care. Cancel me. I do not care. I don't care. I exist outside of the matrix. No one can damage me. Doesn't matter. I don't even have a fucking account. What are you gonna do? Ban me? I don't even have an account.
Well, our opinions have been invalidated so many times of him that we're gonna disable his Patreon. Wow. Wow, you would really do that. You would really do that!
Honestly, I don't care if I get deleted from YouTube. I don't care, because I will rise and I will go on any platform I want to. Don't you fucking worry, and you will follow me. So there you go.
Well, Chantal certainly ticked that box. Now, the next category was unemployable. Now, I don't mean unemployed, because as I said before, you can be unemployed and doing charity or voluntary work. I also don't mean the person is poor. You can be very rich and be an antisocial oddity. They cannot take instructions or orders from somebody else. They will abuse their work colleagues. They have very little job satisfaction or ambition to work. In fact, it interferes with their everyday living.
We have two breaks. Every 2 hours we get a break. After the first 2 hours, break. After the next 2 hours, that's when our lunch is, but really it's going to be dinner. And then we get another break after the next 2 hours. So, like, this is our snacks. We sit at our desk all day long doing government type of deals. But let me tell you, we can't have snacks there. But the only thing we're allowed to have is chewy candy that isn't sticky or hard candy to suck on. We got the lemon head kind, which has apple head, cherry head, and lemon head, like I said before. Okay, so these are the Tootsie Fruit Chews. We got some fruit, or some chewy fruities. Never had these before, but anything that's fruity and chewy, I will eat. I'm just gonna do this full pack. crybabies to suck on, 'cause I'm a crybaby. These are hard candies. They're assorted treats, fools, whatever.
I've been unemployed for most of my adult life, and the worst thing about being unemployed is having to go to this stupid job centre. If you don't know what the job centre is, it's basically a place that you go to, and they give you money if you don't have a job. Which kind of makes you think to yourself, what's the point in getting a job if they're going to give me money anyway?
So since I've got nothing better to do and I've got 2 hours to kill, why don't I give you a tour of where I work? I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for doing this. I'm going to quit anyway, so it doesn't really matter if they fire me.
How can I use these women to make me money? I don't want to put them on the track because they're my women. I don't want other people touching them. And by coincidence, I'm just Googling things up, and I discovered this webcam website. And I'd never heard of webcam before. This is a long time ago as well. It wasn't as big as it is now. Now everyone knows about OnlyFans, all this shit. Like 8 years ago, 7 years ago, whenever this was, it wasn't nearly as big. And I found this little webcam thing, and I was like, this might be some money.
The third trait is that they're influenced by themselves, and that would make sense because they're godlike. Now, I'm not one for hero worship. That can be dangerous. But I do have people that inspire me, that influence me, and I admire. They have themselves.
And it just feels unfair. How do they get visas so easily and I'm just stuck here as a tourist? I look way more Japanese than they do, and I probably speak much better Japanese than they do as well. And I've been to Japan way more times than they have. And I think I have a much better understanding of the culture as well.
They are rarely inspired by the achievements of others, so they will never try to replicate what they do to gain success. Instead, they get bitter. So they don't get better, they get bitter. And they think their achievements are much greater than they actually are.
And the fact that I can sing in the shower, let alone sing Skyscraper by Demi Lovato and like not be out of breath while hitting those high ass notes, just goes to show, like, wow, okay. You're doing your thing, Amberlyn.
Amberlyn can sing a high note in the shower. So she's now concluded she has normal cardiovascular fitness. Likewise, Chantal is so out of touch with humans, she thinks 25 minutes of walking is a flex.
I just walked 25 minutes, biatch. What? Huh? Let's not go there.
Let's go there. If she didn't ask rhetorical questions all the time and bothered to speak to somebody else and listen to the answer, she would realise that 25 minutes is very, very poor cardiovascular fitness. It certainly isn't a flex.
Vegetarian body! Ah! This is my body!
You are indeed right, sir. That is your body. What tends to throw the antisocial oddity into the public spotlight are their opinions. They're normally extreme and rigid, but also they have rules and regulations that they set out for other people, which are also rigid. While they cannot follow basic rules or regulations, they can create the most dictatorial, extreme, and rigid rules for others. In human development, we all go through the stage where we are the center of the universe, but we socialize, we mature, and we grow out of it. They never do. If you remember being a 2-year-old, you raised a 2-year-old, or you've ever worked with a 2-year-old, it's all about what they want and what they desire. For various reasons, antisocial oddities never grow out of this stage.
Because of her disease, it's difficult for this little girl to live a normal life, but her classmates are doing everything they can to make sure she feels included in playtime.
Around the age of 4 or 5, most people will begin to feel some kind of empathy or sympathy for people that are vulnerable. We have a sense of group and society and wanting to see other people happy. They don't. As they are godlike, they are above other people's rules and regulations. So they have a what's in it for me approach, even at a very young age. They cannot understand why people are following rules, regulations, and guidelines written by riffraff when people should really be listening to them. Their views are never based on the good of the people, the good of society. Their views are based solely on their own wants, needs, and desires. Some of their views might accidentally resonate with the masses, but if you listen to them long enough, it's like listening to a child. When listening to antisocial oddities, at first we might be impressed because the information we are being told seems unique and novel. After about 15 minutes, we begin to see some holes and some flaws in their arguments, but we still give them the benefit of the doubt because they impressed us in the first 10 minutes. And after 30 minutes, you realize you're listening to a mishmash of self-absorbed, tyrannical, unpractical, unworkable nonsense. You just should be thankful that they are not running a country and you are not one of their subjects, because you probably would not be alive.
Where my people at? Where my people at?
Remember that I'm not talking about opinions. I'm talking about people that live outside society, creating rules and regulations, a manifesto on how society should live to please them. Staying on the manifesto, all their relationships have to be planned, which means they don't happen organically. If they don't have any use for you, they just don't want to be around you. If they can't use you or abuse you, you become utterly and thoroughly useless.
Is he right? When it comes to women, you've got a short attention span?
No, women know too much. I'm all for girls that don't know too much. It's a different class.
Here's a test when you meet a bitch for the first time. Say, what are you doing next week? Correct answer. Oh, nothing, just home. Attractive. That's what I want to hear. You ain't been nowhere. You don't go nowhere. Just home. Busy bitches, social bitches, unattractive. You're a hoe. You've been too many places. You're not home enough. You're not reading the Bible. Uninterested.
Everyone has their own personal preference of who they want to be around. It becomes antisocial if you are seeking out people to dominate and filtering out people because you can't use or abuse them. Now, if antisocial oddities were just filtering out or rejecting people that weren't a great fit for them, that would be one thing. But more often than not, they often belittle, dislike, resent, and full out hate the people they can't use. They simply don't see any purpose in you existing.
There was one time when I met this guy who knows my channel. I met him in Japan and then I hung out with a bunch of his friends. And it was so boring. Okay, the first hour was kind of nice, I guess. But after about an hour or two, I just felt really bored and I just wanted to go home. I was sitting there, listening to these people that I barely knew, listening to them tell me their life story. And I just honestly could not care less.
While they may filter out people, live in a bubble, and live on the edge of society, not within it, they also set themselves up as experts of humanity. They use social media to vent their frustrations and anger about the world, but they just don't have enough puzzle pieces to build up the greater picture. As consumers of social media and people that actually live within a society, we are curious to know what these adults with a few puzzle pieces actually think of the world. We know you live in a compound with your brother and you're not interacting with people. We know you spend most of the time hiding in your car or your house and you're not interacting with people. We know you've spent most of your life hiding in your childhood bedroom. And we know you get most of your opinions about the world from the comfort of your own bed. If you've reached the age of majority and you interact with a wide variety of people and you travel, you're going to know far more about the world than they will ever know. But you're still curious to know what is on their minds. I could have easily labeled them antisocial curiosities because people that interact with each other are curious about people that live on the edge of society. My personal view is I prefer to hear all that talk from a 2-year-old rather than an adult. So far, we've heard about people that are not successful, rejected and filtered out by the antisocial oddity. But what happens if you're successful and you please them? Will these people make good romantic partners? Nope. That is because they're not attracted to you because they love you, like you, have anything in common with you. They haven't picked you because you have a shared interest, and they certainly don't want to grow old with you. They have picked you so they can use you. You are there to fulfill their needs only. You're there to be used when needed and discarded when you're not needed. While they may not always name their partners, there is nothing taboo that they won't speak about concerning their partners. And they will use what would normally be private and personal moments as a form of entertainment on social media.
Please, in your hand.
I'm not.
Give it to me.
If you ever find yourself vulnerable or sick, a 4-year-old will look after you better than an antisocial oddity. They are wired to have their needs met. They're not wired to give care or to look after people. They just don't understand how to do it. Their ideal partner is a robot. They don't grow old, they don't get sick, and they can be programmed to the person's liking. They don't understand what being charitable means. So they would never do anything like this.
Here I see that he shaved his head. I cut it off.
You cut off your hair? How come?
To make Zach feel like he's not the only one without any hair.
Just a few steps before the finish line, an exhausted athlete loses control of his body, which his opponents quickly take advantage of. All except one.
If you ever find yourself in a weakened or vulnerable state, expect to be pushed to one side. As they live on the outskirts of society, not within, they don't have the same connection to people. They see vulnerable or weak people as a nuisance, irrelevant, and also taking away attention that could be directed towards them. They have a what's in it for me attitude towards being charitable. On a day-to-day basis, they will be cold, aloof, and uncaring. They don't understand the emotions that some people have that stimulate them to help other people. That is missing in them. They will never do anything kind organically. Everything they do will always be planned. Human acts of kindness, which are organic, stimulate high emotion in us, but their acts of charity, which are contrived, often leave us cold.
Despite his on-screen persona, Savile's attitude to children was apparently different when the cameras were turned off.
He did not like children at all. He tolerated them, but that's about as far as it went for the value of the programme.
I think all children should be eaten at birth.
As well as his TV and radio career, Savile was renowned for his charity work. raising millions of pounds for several charities.
Jim, because he was Jim, liked high-profile things. So he generated to things that had quite a high publicity value.
If you are giving money or goods to get out of a problem or to get what you want, it's either PR or a bribe. It is not charity. And you are not charitable. In fact, you are the exact opposite. They do not understand or care about basic human suffering. They do understand if they give products or money, they can look good on camera.
Oh no.
I'm hungry. I ate since yesterday.
You should probably get some food.
You look after yourself, Becky, 'cause I won't.
So I am getting rid of this pile of stuff here. There's just like a grocery cart carrier situation, a blanket. Under here there's like earrings, makeup brushes I've never used, purses, some books and stuff like that. And then I'm also getting rid of all of these DVDs, Pokemon cards. There are a few movies where I second guessed and I was like, oh my god, should I keep them? So we have made it to Goodwill, but it's closed, so we're just gonna leave it out here. Ta-da! Bye, Goodwill.
I will not administer CPR unless you're a hot female. This is the reality. If you're some fat dude and you just had a heart attack and I don't really know you, you're gonna die. Well, I had a heart attack. Get the fuck up. What the fuck's wrong with you? Go to the hospital later. Have a drink. Cigarette, cup of coffee. Get back in the game. Fucking having heart attacks near me, little pussy. I live with a very, very pure heart. I'm a religious man. I go to church. Anyone who follows me in detail knows I donate huge sums of money to the church. And as long as I knew the truth of my heart and God knew the truth of my heart, I wasn't interested in lies being purported.
I have no sympathy for him. I have no sympathy for her. You don't understand why I hate those people? Then goodbye. You don't need to be here. I have no sympathy for her mom. I have no sympathy for that whole fucking retirement home.
That is the logic of a crazed dictator that would burn down an entire city because somebody from that city was rude to them. Not long after posting this, she would seek out a random elderly couple, go on a social media tirade for a good 48 hours, assassinating every part of that couple's character. When challenged about her behaviour, she suddenly becomes the most charitable woman in the world. She's not able to understand the difference between selfless acts of charity and bribing somebody with goods to get what you want.
And I don't give a fuck. If I want to give a fucking Cuban man a fucking laptop, I will. If you don't like it, fuck off. Are you jealous that you can't give a man a laptop? What's your problem? I can give 10 men a laptop. Are you fucking jealous? Do you know how much money I make a month? I hate having money. I hate making $50,000 a month, and I'm giving it all to poor people.
Just not these poor people. They look rich and self-sufficient. They don't need computers. Ah, this is much better. This is a type of person that needs charity. He can't afford a shirt.
As long as I'm white and privileged, I'm gonna fucking do everything I can with my money to help other people.
I will be discussing her Cuban charity mission later. Antisocial oddities also have zero sense of humour. While they do laugh, it's not because they're enjoying a joke with their friends or they're enjoying a TV programme. They tend not to laugh with people, they laugh at people. And if they're not laughing at people, they're laughing at their superiority or achievements.
Babe, I don't know how to get all this in here.
You look like 10 miles of rough road. Everyone could have wanted to...
Their humour is often mean-spirited or just laughing at their own superiority or achievements. You could put these people on the moon and they would be able to live because they only care about flexing at locations and what people who are at those locations can do for them. They mobilise throughout society in a protective bubble, filtering most people out. They never will be a genuine visitor, tourist, or resident in any location or country. They have no interest in surroundings and people within those surroundings. If you watch them mobilise the world, they refuse to adapt to situations, locations, and people. They remain rigid and their behaviour remains the same. So what does the future hold for people who are antisocial oddities? Well, that depends on their popularity and how well they can channel that into income streams. The general public is fickle and will eventually tire of them and move on to somebody else. The consumer doesn't even care if you're not really an antisocial oddity and you're just pretending for money, even if you ruin your health or your life. It's just temporary entertainment.
What is your name?
Wibble.
What is 2 plus 2?
Oh, wibble, wibble.
Once the spotlight moves away from an antisocial oddity, they will just return to doing what they did before the spotlight was on them. Antisocial oddities are the human equivalent of the novelty single. Initially, there's loads of hype and buzz, and as time goes by, everybody gaslights each other and pretend they didn't really care. And we also pretend we haven't seen it all before. The conclusion here is antisocial oddities exist in everyday life. They polarise the population, trying to make sense of the world with the few puzzle pieces that they have. How much power you want to give the antisocial oddity, well, that's on you. Just remember, you've seen it and heard it all before.